Hello, my name's Emese Hall and I'm currently one of the NSEAD Vice Presidents. I'm here today to talk to you about my love of yarn and crochet as part of the NSEAD Creative Kindness community. So this is very informal, there's no kind of script, there's no kind of tutorial content, it's really just me sharing my interest and something that I really enjoy doing, and I found especially relaxing and fulfilling during this whole kind of COVID period. So I started crocheting about 8 years ago. I'm by no means an expert. I tend to stick to the same limited repertoire of stitches, but what really gets me excited is using different yarns. And often people talk about wool and as a generic term, but there's so many different types of yarn that have different kind of qualities and are useful for different projects. So I'm going to share some of my favorite yarns with you this morning and also share a few of my little projects with you as well. So just to start with is something I haven't made, but my mum did. My mum is a really big knitter. She is very, very talented. And this is just a little bag that she made for me that are inside. I have got some little crocheted flowers for various projects, just because that's quite a simple activity to do, and using really nice yarn is just a really kind of enjoyable activity. And you know, I build up a store of this kind of thing and then you never know when it's going to be useful. So this little bag, which is made from a colour change yarn, reminds me of one of the Masoni signature patterns with those zigzags, and this is knitted rather than crocheted. I can knit a tiny bit, but it's not really my thing. I much prefer crochet, working with a single hook. So I like to take my crochet out and about with me when I go out and about, which I haven't for a little while because of the whole COVID situation. I have this lovely little bag that I bought actually on one of the NSEAD conference events when we went to a gallery in Liverpool. It wasn't the Tate, it was another one we visited, and it was in the shop. And that's just the perfect size for fitting in scissors and fitting in hooks and fitting in a bit of yarn. And that's just my little travel crochet pochette, as I call it. And I'm very, very fond of that. The other one, as lovely as it is, doesn't travel so well because you can't do it up. So I have got a selection of yarns to share with you. Here is one beauty, one absolute beauty. This is a pure wool yarn that is a chunky grade. So it's very very soft. It's a lovely coral color, a lovely gentle coral, and coral is one of my favorite colors. So that is just lovely for me as a thing without even turning it into any kind of object at all. And I do actually have a basket of yarn I keep in my living room just to look at. And often I don't put my yarn away, although I have lots of bags I could put it in and boxes. I like to have it around because of the colour. And what's exciting for me with this yarn is the colour, the texture, the colour combinations. It's just really aesthetically pleasing. So here's my basket that is currently overflowing. I've got quite a boring black there, but it's very useful for bringing out other colours. I've got the end tail of a really lovely colour change yarn. This is mostly cotton, but it's got some other fibres in there as well. And it's a shame my view in real life does not quite look like what you're seeing on camera, because the colours are never quite translate in the same way. But this is one that changes to lots of different colours, and it's from a current project that I've been working on. I say project like it's something grand. It really isn't. It's a cushion cover, but I've been using very chunky yarn, and this is what this looks like. This is going out of focus. It is essentially a giant granny square. So I've used a combination of the colour change yarn and some plain yarn to kind of accentuate the colours there. And that is going to be cushion. That's one side of it. The great thing about working with chunky yarn is it's really satisfying to feel. It has a lovely, lovely texture. The disadvantage is you can have a big ball and it doesn't go very far because it is chunky. I really enjoy cushions, just broadly speaking, not just making them, but just I'm a cushion person. One of the first projects that I made with crochet was this cushion here. Oh, what's going out of focus? So the colours aren't very exciting. So I've got grey and red, but peeping through the little holes, you can see the purple of the cushion pad underneath. So that's quite a nice combination. These granny squares are a very kind of traditional way of making crochet. The downside is you have to join them together, and the joining together is quite time consuming. And I actually have a whole heap of squares of all sorts that are waiting to be joined that I haven't got round to yet because I move on to the next project. Here's one example of a little square using quite a fine yarn. Again, it's a colour change one, and I don't normally like to use the very finest yarn because it takes a long time to make something to see results. So it's a little bit fiddly. I mean, it is very dainty, so it does feel nice in contrast to the chunky yarn. Again, that colour change is quite exciting because you don't always know how it's going to turn out. So I've got a whole heap of these that at some point I will be joining together and maybe turning into a blanket when I get round to it. So that was made with quite a fine crochet hook. This is my favourite crochet hook. It's an ergonomic one, so it's got like this little padded section in the middle. It's not the prettiest colour. It's a bit kind of sort of salted caramel, which I suppose is a nice association, but it's my favourite hook, and I often use it for different projects just because it's my favourite. But I also have some lovely coloured metallic ones here, so depending on what size the hook is, there's a different colour. So there's a lovely metallic purple and a metallic green, and you can get a big set of these for not a lot of money, but they're just lovely as a thing. And again, I like to have those around to look at as well. This is my biggest needle. This is a number 9, a 9mm. I've done a couple of things with this, but although it feels lovely in your hand, it's not my favorite. It's a little bit too large for me. So although I like chunky yarn, I don't like mega chunky yarn. So what else am I going to show you? I have got a bag here of lots of different kinds of yarn, and I've got a big collection. And sometimes I buy them with something in mind that I'm going to make. Sometimes I just have them because they're lovely. This is one actually from a local farm, Lily Warren, where I live in Devon. This is pure wool. It has a slight roughness to it. So it doesn't feel especially lovely in terms of it being soft, but it's a really beautiful colour. It's described as Sandy Park Scarlet, but it's actually a kind of soft raspberry. So despite the slight roughness to the wool, it's really nice to think it's a local yarn, and it is a beautiful colour. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with that one. This is one that came from a bargain bin online. I admit I do buy a lot of my yarn online. This one is 50% wool and 50% acrylic. Acrylic is obviously a synthetic fibre, and you can get different qualities of acrylic. And this is actually quite a good quality one. When I saw the colour online, I thought, oh, that's nice. And it was really cheap. It's like £1.75 for a ball. But when it arrived, I was like, oh, I'm not sure about that colour at all. It's bit yucky. It's not quite what I had in mind, but actually I've used this in some different projects, and put with the right color combinations combined with the other colors, it actually looks quite golden and quite beautiful. So I surprised myself there with this little bargain number. I also have this interesting yarn, which it has a kind of heathered effect with kind of little flecks in there. This is by a brand called Debbie Bliss. She's quite a sort of prolific one. This is called a Paloma tweed, so the tweed finish has the little flecks. And what's interesting about this particular yarn is it's almost got kind of a plaited effect. It's very, very soft. I'm not quite sure what the weight is. I think it's probably described as a chunky yarn. I'm not sure of the exact composition of it, whether, let's see what it says. It's 50% alpaca, which accounts for the softness, 30% wool, 14% acrylic, 6% viscose. So it's a mixed yarn. I really do like the colour. I like the fleck. I'm not entirely convinced about the kind of the texture of it, but again, it was another bargain bin find, and it, because of that alpaca, it's beautifully soft, so actually it is nice to engage with. Here is another really chunky wool in a beautiful shade of purple. I do love purples, and that's kind of I think it's from the same range as the corals, so those actually work really beautifully together, not only in weight but colours as well, and they're just lovely to squish, you know, as like a little pet. Here's an example of a really lovely alpaca. This is 100% alpaca. I don't know if that's reverse for you. This comes from Peru, not directly, but this is from a really great online company called Purple Sheep Yarns, and they specialize in alpaca. They do other yarns as well. They sell them for a really good price and the beautiful quality. It's a lovely yarn to work with. It doesn't come in thick weights, but the color ranges are wonderful. This is a double knitting, which is kind of a standard weight yarn, and this is a lovely kind of dusty corally pink. I've worked with this quite a lot, and it's really satisfying, really lovely to hold. This yarn here is from my favorite brand, which is a Japanese company called Noro, and they specialize in color change yarn, but not just color change, texture. The texture as well is just incredible. So this particular one is just so multicolored. It's just like, you know, when you get a piece of plasticine that mixes with other pieces of plasticine and it all kind of marbles. Well, this is an example as a yarn. So again, just as a thing, it is beautiful, but when you start working with it, it's just so satisfying. I'm not quite sure the composition of this one. Oh, here we go. This one is mostly cotton with some wool and a little bit of silk. And the little bit of silk adds a kind of slight sort of fluffiness and a slight kind of shimmer. So Noro wool I'm absolutely in love with. It is organic, and I think they try and make the dyes as sustainable as possible to give the environment. It is an expensive yarn because it is very good quality, and there's so many different types. So I'm a real bargain hunter online. I spend a long time kind of looking out for good bargains, because often companies, particularly smaller ones, will have like lots where they've got like a couple of balls left and they're not having it in stock anymore. So you can that's a top tip, to kind of search around and find them at a cheaper price, because normally a ball like this would be about £9. And you know, if you add that up for a project, it can get quite expensive. So talking about Noro yarn, I have 2 prized possessions to share with you, and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with them yet, because they're just so lovely as things. Here we go. Look at this. Look at the colours there. So this is a massive ball of yarn with all that wonderful texture, all those wonderful colours. It comes with a beautiful kind of ribbon with Japanese writing on that. I'm not quite sure what it says exactly, but this is it's 100% wool yarn. It's a chunky weight yarn, and also it's a 200-gram ball. Typically most yarn comes in 50 grams, baby yarn's 25. This one is 200 grams, so it's a really big yarn, and it's almost like a sculpture. So I've got 2 of those in slightly different colorways. It took me a long time to choose them. They were actually a gift. Did not buy them for myself. The RRP is like £30, so they're pretty expensive. But you know, 200 grams, you could do quite a lot with that. So this one has some lovely greys and purple, pink, a little bit of mustard in there as well, a little bit of tiny little flecks of green, sort of teal colour. So if I put them side by side, you can see kind of the contrast in them. And yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those yet. I just love them as things. They're just so beautiful, and they live in their little protective organza bag. So I'll put them back in there in a moment. So Noro yarn, absolutely adore Noro yarn. I can't get enough of it, and I'm always on the search for bargain balls of Noro yarn. What I've been doing with my Noro is making little baskets, little bowls. So here's one. This is the base of one. And then the sides, I have actually incorporated some other yarn as well, but again, it's beautiful colour change. My bowl making started because I saw a plea for nests for baby birds and other little baby animals for an animal sanctuary. So I started making some little nests for the birds, not using my Noro yarn, using some other scraps that I put together, and I made about 9 or 10 of those. And then I thought, oh, you know, what else could I do? I'll make some kind of posher bowls using some nicer yarn. So that's really satisfying, to make something kind of three-dimensional rather than working flat. So I've been making recently these kind of smaller size bowls that I kind of refer to as urchin bowls, because they remind me of like little sea urchins. And again, it's Noro colour change yarn. This one's in green, and I've put a little flower corsage on there just to kind of add some decoration. And that's just a lovely little thing. It just fits beautifully up into your hand. It's useful to put all kinds of little bits and pieces in. So I'm building up quite a collection of those. There's a lovely kind of purple one with some orange and red in it as well. So those two little guys have little flower corsage on, and then I've got a whole set that's made from the same, again, Noro yarn, that are quite autumnal in colours, and these ones don't yet have any little flowers on. I'm not sure whether I'm going to add flowers, because I actually quite like them how they are. They remind me a little bit of acorn cups. So I think I've got 6 of those, all in slightly different colours, and again, it's all from the same yarn. That was a 100-gram hank, and a hank is where you get like a big loop, it's just gorgeous to look at, but before you can work with it, you have to roll it into a ball and you have to untangle it. So that in itself was quite fun, because it's like a little puzzle, how you kind of how you get the knots out of it, because it always gets knotty. So you can spend a good long time making a ball up from a skein or hank, but it's quite a nice activity to engage with. I can also show you the cushion I've made loads of cushions. This one here, oh sorry, it's going blurry. This one here is made from 2 different colour change yarns from a company called Yorkshire Spinners. And this was kind of shades of grey with some limey green. I made this one for my son's bedroom. And then the other side is a beautiful rainbow. And that's just one yarn that changes colour. So actually, colour change yarn would be a top recommendation to you, because it's so satisfying to work with, and you don't have to fiddle around changing colours and tying ends and all this kind of thing. Here's another example of a cushion I have made. This has quite a lot of alpaca in it, which is beautifully soft. You probably can't see it, but the darker bands are made using an acrylic, again a colour change one, but sadly, because the acrylic is probably not the best quality, it's gone a bit kind of fluffy and pilled a bit. So that is the disadvantage of some acrylics, especially if you want to kind of use them in a practical context. They're not the most kind of stable, so they will go a bit fluffy, which can be a little bit disappointing, especially when you've spent a long time making something. I showed you my current projects. I showed you those. What else was I going to tell you about? Oh yes, this was it. So I'm not going to give you a tutorial around crochet, and as I say, I'm not an expert. I have a limited range of stitches, but it's really engaging with the yarn that excites me. All these beautiful colours and textures are just lovely to sit with. And I often crochet when I'm like watching the TV, when I get the rare chance to watch the TV, something trashy like The Real Housewives of New York City, while I do my crochet. It's quite indulgent with a glass of wine. This is something that I call freeform crochet. Oh, sorry, it's going out of focus. So I'm not sure. It probably has, sorry, why is it going all blurry? I don't know if it has a proper name, but essentially you're just making lots and lots of chains and joining them together in a net. So I guess if you made enough of this, and it uses quite a lot of yarn, you could make some kind of scarf. But this particular piece is made from a lovely tweed wool. It's got little flecks of black and white in there. I have been making for a COVID piece. I was going to make a large kind of textile installation about COVID. I still am, and I will finish it at some point. So this is part of it. And then I have one in a slightly different, it's that yarn I showed you before and said I wasn't sure about the texture in terms of the kind of the knitted, but actually it works quite well in this format. It's very satisfying to do freeform crochet because there's no rules really. Backwards and forwards and just making all these random kind of connections. So it's like kind of doodling, crochet doodling. So that is very, very satisfying to do. And you don't, well, how much skills involved? Not an awful lot. You know, and then when you've made something, who knows what you can do with it? You know, you could turn it into a little bit. Actually, that feels lovely. So that's about it, I think. I mean, there's loads more I could say, but I would certainly encourage you, if you're interested, to just either go to a shop or look online and find some yarn that really excites you, like this color change Noro that is just gorgeous. I mean, just one ball of that brings so much joy. So actually it's worth, to me, would be worth paying full price. And then, you know, you can just enjoy it as a thing before you even attack it with a crochet needle. So I hope I've given you some insight into my passion for yarn, and this is a small selection of what I've got, and just, you know, how fulfilling working with crochet can be. And you don't have to follow patterns, although you might want to. You don't have to have loads of experience, but it's just really getting your mitts on the yarn and enjoying the different colors. And I've enjoyed talking to you about one of my passions, and I hope you can take away something from it. And thank you so much for sticking with me. Take care. Bye bye.